The aroma of rosemary and garlic filled our cozy kitchen, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. I stood by the stove, stirring a bubbling pot of risotto, my heart fluttering with anticipation. It was our anniversary, a milestone that always brought a special kind of magic into our home. Candles flickered on the dining table, casting a soft glow that danced in rhythm with my excitement. I had spent the entire day preparing, wanting everything to be perfect for Mark. "Jess?" Mark's voice floated in from the living room, sounding playful as always. "Are you trying to cook or summon a witch with all those herbs?" I chuckled, wiping my hands on a dish towel before walking into the living room. Mark was sprawled comfortably on the couch, his dark hair tousled and a mischievous grin spreading across his face. He looked effortlessly charming, as he always did, and I felt a rush of love wash over me. "Just trying to create a little culinary magic here," I replied, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You know, to keep the spark alive." "Ah, the spark," he mused, his eyes narrowing playfully. "Speaking of which, I've been thinking—" My stomach fluttered. Mark had a way of turning casual conversations into something deeper, and I was always curious about where his thoughts would lead. "What about?" He sat up, the glint in his eye making me wary. "What if we tried to spice things up a bit more? I mean, really shake things up? Mark, we've been together for years. I think we have a pretty good routine going," I said, half joking, though the tension in the air was palpable. He hesitated for a moment, and my heart began to race. What if we opened our relationship?" I blinked, the words hanging heavily in the air between us. "Open our relationship? Are you serious?" "Yeah, I mean, think about it," he said, leaning forward, his enthusiasm infectious. "It could be thrilling. We could explore new connections and—" "Mark, this isn't some casual arrangement. This is our marriage we're talking about." I felt my voice rise slightly, a mix of shock and confusion swirling within me. "It doesn't have to be that way," he insisted, his eyes locked onto mine, searching for understanding. "I just want us to enjoy life more. We could even have fun with Tom next door. He's charming, don't you think?" Tom, our handsome neighbor. The thought of him sent a strange shiver down my spine. Sure, he was easy on the eyes, with that effortless smile, and the way he always seemed to know just how to lighten a mood. But to think of him as a potential partner, it felt surreal. "You can't be serious," I whispered, my heart racing. "Why not?" Mark's voice was steady, almost encouraging. "It could be liberating. We'd still have each other, but we could explore other options." I took a deep breath, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions crashing inside me. "Mark, this is a lot to take in. Are you sure this is what you want?" "I am," he said, his tone earnest. "I want you to enjoy life, to not feel tied down. And if we're honest, we both have fantasies. Why not share them?" The room was heavy with tension as I searched his face for signs of mischief, but all I found was sincerity. "And you really think I'd just be okay with this?" "Jess," he said softly, standing up and stepping closer. "I love you. I just want us to explore, to live a little, together." My heart raced at the intimacy of his words, but the idea of sharing him, of inviting someone else into our sacred space, felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. I need time to think about this," Mark nodded, his expression understanding but eager. "Take your time. Just know, I'm serious about this." With those words hanging in the air, I turned back to the kitchen, my mind a storm of thoughts, each one crashing into the next. Would I really consider this? The question gnawed at me as I stirred the risotto, the simmering pot now mirroring the bubbling chaos in my heart. I sat on the edge of our bed, the warm glow of the streetlights filtering through the curtains, casting shadows that danced across the room. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one more chaotic than the last. Mark's proposition had left me reeling. The very idea of an open relationship felt like a double-edged sword, thrilling, yet terrifying. I could still hear the excitement in his voice, the way he casually mentioned Tom, our charming neighbor, as if he were just another dinner guest. It was absurd. It was outrageous. And yet, a part of me was undeniably intrigued. The following weekend, I found myself at the neighborhood barbecue, a gathering that promised laughter, food, and perhaps a little too much wine. As I stepped into the backyard filled with friends and families, the aroma of grilled burgers wafted through the air, mingling with the laughter of children playing tag. I could see Mark mingling with the guys, his demeanor relaxed and carefree. But there was something electric in the air, something that made my heart race. Tom. Tom stood by the grill, flipping burgers with an effortless charm that had always drawn me in. His sun-kissed skin glistened under the golden rays, and his smile could light up the dreariest of days. I approached him hesitantly, my stomach fluttering with anticipation. As I neared, he looked up, and our eyes locked for a brief moment that felt like an eternity. "Jessica, you made it. I was starting to think you'd bail on us," he said, his voice smooth and inviting. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, trying to sound casual while my heart raced. "I see you're the grill master today." He chuckled, a sound that resonated deep within me. "Gotta keep everyone fed, right? How's the anniversary celebration going?" I hesitated, the weight of Mark's proposal heavy on my mind. "It's different. Mark had an interesting idea we're exploring." Tom raised an eyebrow, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "Interesting? Now you've got me intrigued." Before I could respond, a wave of laughter erupted nearby, and my attention was momentarily diverted. But I could feel Tom's gaze on me, a mixture of interest and something deeper. When I looked back, he was leaning closer, his tone shifting to something more intimate. "You know, I've always thought you were incredible, Jessica. It's hard not to notice." My breath hitched in my throat. The compliment felt like a spark, igniting something within me that I had suppressed for too long. "Thank you, Tom. That means a lot coming from you." The conversation flowed easily, each word laced with an undercurrent of flirtation. I could feel a tension building between us, thick and palpable, as if the world around us had faded away. Just then, Mark wandered over, a beer in hand, oblivious to the charged atmosphere. "Hey, Tom, you're keeping my wife entertained, I see," Mark said, his tone light, but I caught the glimmer of something darker in his eyes. "Just sharing some grilling tips," Tom replied with a grin, but the moment felt heavy, filled with unspoken words. I could sense Mark's approval, a strange validation that twisted my stomach in knots. What was happening? I should be feeling guilty, but instead, I felt alive, thrilled by the attention, the flirtation, the possibilities that lay ahead. As the sun began to set and the sky turned a brilliant shade of orange, I found myself stealing glances at Tom, whose laughter rang out like music. I felt drawn to him, to the idea of what could be, and the excitement coursed through my veins like adrenaline. The guilt and confusion bubbled beneath the surface, but it was overshadowed by a longing I hadn't realized existed. That night, as I lay in bed beside Mark, the weight of the day's events settled on my chest like a heavy blanket. I stared at the ceiling, unable to close my eyes. My mind raced with visions of Tom's smile, his easy confidence, and the way he had looked at me. "Jessica, you okay?" Mark murmured, half asleep. "Yeah, just thinking," I whispered, not ready to share the storm brewing inside me. "About what?" he pressed, stirring slightly. "Just about what you suggested," I replied, my heart pounding. "Good. I think it's going to be an adventure," he said, his voice laced with excitement. Adventure? How could he see it that way? I was teetering on the edge of a precipice, unsure of whether to jump or retreat. I closed my eyes, trying to quell the turmoil within, but the thrill of what had just begun was undeniable. I was caught in a web of desire, and the thought of exploring it with Tom sent shivers down my spine, both exhilarating and terrifying. What had I signed up for? The sun dipped low in the sky, painting the neighborhood in warm hues of orange and violet. I stepped out of my front door, the brisk evening air wrapping around me like a soft blanket, my heart racing with a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. Tonight was the night things would change. Mark had encouraged me to embrace my feelings for Tom, and as I made my way to his house, a cocktail of excitement and anxiety bubbled within me. "Jessica!" Tom's voice rang out as I approached his porch, his smile wide and inviting. He looked more handsome than usual, his hair tousled just right, and those piercing blue eyes seemed to sparkle with mischief. "I'm glad you could make it." "Thanks for inviting me," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I could feel the weight of my decision pressing down on me as I stepped closer, the scent of his cologne intoxicating. It was a far cry from the routine I had come to know with Mark. We settled on the patio, the evening air filled with the sounds of crickets and distant laughter from neighbors enjoying the last remnants of summer. Conversation flowed easily between us, the flirtation palpable as we shared stories and laughter. It felt liberating to be in the moment, free from the expectations that usually surrounded me. "Have you thought about what Mark said?" Tom asked, his tone shifting slightly, curiosity etched on his face. I hesitated, the weight of my choices settling heavily on my shoulders. "I have. It's complicated." "Complicated can be good," he said, leaning in closer. There was an intensity in his gaze that made my heart race. Sometimes, stepping outside of what's comfortable leads us to discover who we truly are. His words resonated with me. Mark had always been the steady rock in my life, but lately, I felt like I was losing pieces of myself in the process. "I guess I'm just trying to figure out what I want," I confessed, my voice trembling slightly. "You deserve to find what makes you happy," he said softly, his hand brushing against mine. The touch sent a jolt through me, igniting a fire I hadn't anticipated. "Maybe we can explore that together." Before I could respond, Tom leaned in, capturing my lips with his. The kiss was electric, filled with an urgency that took my breath away. I melted into him, the world around us fading away. In that moment, I forgot about Mark, about the chaos that awaited me at home. All that mattered was the warmth of Tom's embrace and the intoxicating thrill of desire. As the kiss deepened, my mind raced. Was I really doing this? I pulled back, breathless, my heart pounding in my chest. "Tom, what if Mark finds out?" "Let him," Tom replied, a hint of defiance in his voice. "You have to live your life for you, Jessica. Don't let anyone dictate your happiness." His words ignited a spark of rebellion within me. I felt alive, free from the constraints of my marriage for the first time in years. "Maybe you're right," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Tom smiled, his eyes filled with promise. "Let's not think about that right now. Just enjoy this moment." We spent the next hours lost in each other's company, the weight of the world slipping away. But as the night wore on, a nagging feeling crept in. I could feel the pull of my reality, reminding me that I had a life to return to, a life that felt increasingly suffocating. When I finally stood to leave, The chill of the night air hit me like a wave of clarity. As I walked back to my house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced over my shoulder but saw nothing out of the ordinary. The streetlights cast soft pools of light along the pavement, and my heart raced as I reached for my front door. It was only when I stepped inside that I felt a rush of dread. Had Mark seen? The thought twisted in my stomach like a knife. I shook my head, trying to dismiss it. I had to focus on what I felt for Tom, even if it meant stepping into a dark and uncertain path. But as I turned to close the door, I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye. My breath caught in my throat. There, in the shadows, was Mark, his silhouette stark against the dim light. The chill that ran down my spine was not just from the night air, but from the realization that I was not as alone as I thought. I stared at Mark, my heart racing, the words hanging in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. "You orchestrated this?" My voice trembled, both with disbelief and a hint of anger. The man who stood before me, the man I had shared my life with, was now a stranger, manipulating my every move. "Jessica, it was all part of the plan," he replied, his voice calm, almost too calm. "I wanted you to explore your desires. I thought it would bring us closer." "Closer?" I echoed, my mind racing back through the tangled web of emotions that had led us here. "How is this bringing us closer? You've turned my life into some twisted game, Mark." His eyes narrowed, the faintest flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "You don't understand. I've seen how you are with Tom. You're alive, Jess. I wanted that for you, for us. But at what cost?" I shot back, feeling the heat of indignation rising in me. "You're using me, using him. This isn't love, it's manipulation." Mark stepped closer, his presence both comforting and suffocating. "I'm giving you what you crave. I thought you wanted this. Don't act like I'm the villain here." "Villain?" I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. "You're the one who turned my world upside down. I never asked for this." "I know," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But think about it. You've been curious, haven't you? About Tom? About everything we've kept suppressed?" I felt my resolve crumbling. There was a part of me that had indeed been curious, excited even. But to think that Mark had orchestrated it all felt like a knife twisting in my gut. "You've betrayed my trust," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I can't just ignore that." "Jessica, please." He leaned in, his eyes searching mine. "Let's not throw everything away. It's just a new chapter. You can still have Tom, and we can still be us. There's room for both." I stepped back, shaking my head. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about sex or thrill. It's about honesty, about loyalty. How can I trust you after this?" Mark's expression hardened. "You think it's easy for me? Watching you with him? I'm doing this because I love you. You'll see. There's more to gain than to lose." "More to gain?" I felt a bitter laugh bubble up. "You think I'm going to just accept this twisted reality? I feel lost, Mark. I don't even know who I am anymore." "Then let me help you find yourself," he insisted, his tone shifting to a pleading one. "You're not losing me. You're gaining freedom. Freedom to explore who you are without limits." "Freedom?" I echoed, my mind racing. Sure, I had felt liberated during those moments with Tom, but was it truly freedom if it came at the cost of my marriage? "You're just trying to control this situation. You're controlling me." "Jessica, you're overreacting. You're not a prisoner unless you choose to be one. I'm giving you the keys," he argued, frustration creeping into his voice. "You could have it all. Just embrace it." I felt my heart pounding as I grappled with the conflicting emotions swirling in my head. The thrill I felt with Tom was intoxicating, but was it worth the betrayal that came along with it? I need time to think, Mark. I can't just jump into this. Time. He scoffed, running a hand through his hair. Every moment you hesitate is a moment I lose you to him. Don't you see? His words felt like a threat, a subtle reminder that the very thing I craved, freedom, was in danger. The weight of his gaze bore down on me, and I felt trapped. You're trying to pressure me into a decision. I won't be forced into anything, I said firmly. Then what do you want? He shot back, exasperation evident in his voice. Tell me what you want, and I'll give it to you. What did I want? The question echoed in my mind as I turned away, needing space to breathe. The truth was, I was scared. Scared of losing what I had with Mark, scared of what might blossom with Tom, and scared of the dark shadows creeping into my life. I don't know, I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I just don't know. The air was thick with tension as I found myself sitting on the edge of Tom's bed, the soft glow of the bedside lamp casting shadows that danced across the walls. I could hear the faint sounds of the neighborhood outside, the distant laughter of children playing, the rustle of leaves swaying gently in the evening breeze. But all I could focus on was the weight of the moment, the gravity of everything that had unfolded. Tom sat beside me, his expression a blend of concern and something deeper, something I had yet to fully acknowledge. Jessica, he started, his voice low, almost hesitant. I need to tell you something. I glanced at him, my heart racing. The thrill and excitement of our secret rendezvous had morphed into a swirling storm of emotions. What is it? I managed to ask, though my stomach twisted in anticipation. He took a deep breath, his gaze steady on mine. I've developed feelings for you. Real feelings. The words hung in the air, heavy and electrifying. I felt a shiver run down my spine, a mix of elation and dread. Tom was everything I had fantasized about, everything I felt I was missing in my marriage with Mark. But this revelation complicated everything. Tom, I began, searching for the right words. I don't know what to say. I know this is complicated, especially with Mark, he replied, his voice earnest. But I can't pretend that what we have isn't real. It's not just physical for me. I care about you. I bit my lip, torn between the excitement of his confession and the haunting reality of my situation. I care about you too. But I'm still married. I can't just walk away from my life no matter how unhappy I am. Tom nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. I get it. But you deserve to be happy, Jessica. You shouldn't feel trapped. Trapped. The word echoed in my mind as if it were a mantra. That's exactly how I felt, ensnared in a web of my husband's design, manipulated by a man who claimed to love me, yet had orchestrated this entire chaos for his own gratification. I looked away, trying to gather my thoughts, but the shadows of doubt crept in, whispering fears that I couldn't ignore. Just then, my phone buzzed on the bedside table, breaking the heavy silence. I looked at the screen and saw Mark's name flashing. My heart raced. I couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and guilt. Should I answer? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Tom's expression hardened slightly. I don't think you should. Not now. I hesitated, my fingers hovering above the screen, torn between the gravity of my current moment with Tom and the manipulative grip Mark had on my life. What if he knows where I am? Tom reached for my hand, his touch warm and grounding. Let him worry. This is about you, Jessica, not him. I took a deep breath, allowing Tom's words to wash over me. I had been so consumed by Mark's demands and desires that I had forgotten my own. "You're right," I said finally, pulling my hand away from my phone. "But how do I separate myself from this? He's always watching, always controlling." Tom's eyes softened. "You have to take control, Jessica. You have to decide what you want." What did I want? The question lingered like a specter in the room. I wanted passion, freedom, the thrill of being with someone who made me feel alive. But I also wanted to honor the commitment I had made to Mark, even if it had become a twisted version of what love was supposed to be. Suddenly, a thought struck me, cold and chilling. What if Mark had been manipulating this entire situation? What if he was sitting at home, planning his next move, plotting how to use my relationship with Tom against me? My stomach churned at the possibility. "I need to be careful," I murmured, more to myself than to Tom. "Mark is unpredictable." Tom nodded solemnly. "Just promise me you won't lose yourself in this. Whatever happens, you deserve to be happy." I looked deep into Tom's eyes, feeling the weight of his words. In that moment, I realized I was standing at a crossroads, and the choices I made next could change everything. But one thing was clear. I had to confront Mark and uncover the truth behind his motives before I could fully embrace the possibility of happiness with Tom. The fight for my life, my love, and my freedom had only just begun. As I stood in the kitchen, my heart raced with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the room, and the weight of my decision hung heavily in the air. I had been living in a whirlwind of emotions, caught between the thrill of my affair with Tom and the suffocating grasp of Mark's manipulation. I could no longer keep pretending that everything was fine. "Jessica?" Mark's voice called from the living room, breaking my reverie. The familiar tone that once brought me comfort now felt like a warning bell. I took a deep breath, gripping the edge of the countertop until my knuckles turned white. It was time to confront him. "Yeah, I'll be right there," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked into the living room, where Mark was lounging on the couch, a casual smile plastered on his face. He was the picture of nonchalance, but I knew better. "Everything okay?" he asked, his eyes narrowing slightly as he picked up on my tension. "Not really," I said, crossing my arms defensively. "We need to talk." He shifted, a flicker of concern passing over his features. "Sure. What's on your mind?" I hesitated, the words tumbling around in my head like leaves in a storm. "I know what you've been doing, Mark. I know you've been watching me and Tom." His expression hardened, and for a moment I thought I saw a flash of something. Fear? Guilt? But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb with me," I snapped, my voice rising. "I overheard you. I know you've been manipulating this whole situation to get what you want. You think I don't see through your games?" Mark leaned back, a smirk creeping onto his lips. "Maybe you're just overreacting. I mean, you've been having fun, haven't you? Isn't that what you wanted?" I felt my stomach churn. "You're sick, Mark. This isn't just a game to me. I thought I could trust you, but you've turned everything into a twisted joke." At that moment, he stood up, his demeanor shifting from casual to confrontational. "You think you're the only one who's been playing? I've got my own plans, Jessica. You're not the only one with desires." My heart raced as I realized I was cornered. "What do you mean by that?" "Let's just say," he said, stepping closer, "I've been recording your little escapades with Tom. Every moment, every whisper, right from the very start." My breath hitched, and I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. "What? You can't be serious." "Oh, but I am," he said, a triumphant glint in his eyes. "I have all the evidence I need. You think you can just walk away with him? I won't let you destroy what we have. My mind raced, images of Mark with a camera, lurking in the shadows, capturing my most intimate moments with Tom. I felt violated, exposed in a way I had never anticipated. How could you do this to me? To us? Because I love you, Jessica, he replied, his voice dropping to a whisper, but the words felt hollow. I wanted to give you what you thought you wanted, but I won't let you go that easily. I took a step back, the gravity of his admission crashing down around me. You're a monster, Mark. I never wanted this. I just wanted to feel alive again, and you twisted that into something grotesque. Mark's smile faltered for a moment, but then he regained his composure. You're in too deep now, Jess. You can't just back out. You'll regret it. No, I won't, I shouted, shaking with rage and fear. I'm done being your pawn, I'm leaving you. As I turned to storm out, Mark's voice stopped me in my tracks. And what about the recordings? You think Tom will want you once he knows the truth? The threat lingered in the air like smoke. I could feel the walls closing in, my heart pounding in my chest. I was standing on the edge of a precipice, and I had to choose my next move carefully. Mark, you're not going to control me anymore, I said, turning to face him, my voice low but steady. I'll show you that I'm stronger than you think. His laughter echoed through the room, chilling me to the bone. We'll see about that, Jessica. We'll see. With that, I stormed out, the weight of his betrayal heavy in my chest. I had a decision to make, and the stakes had never been higher.